Hi, Joe.
Hey, Darryl, how you going?
I'm good. I'm so glad that you're part of our conference. I've known you for a couple of years. You have by far the absolute best cancer podcast on planet Earth, Simply
Thank you so
Cancer.
much for saying that.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about, I think, something, just very basic and primary, which is once you're diagnosed with cancer, is it at all possible to be happy? And now you have a testicular cancer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but still you have cancer, you're a man with a family, and you're speaking from Melbourne, Australia, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
so you also have a global view on on the world of cancer, but the idea that can you be happy after you hear a doctor say you got cancer, that's primal for all of us. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Darryl. Thank you so much for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for your kind words, Darryl. Yes, it's absolutely possible to be here, but sorry, it's absolutely possible to be happy. What's changed for me, Darryl, in a big, powerful way was the realization that in order to be happy, I realized that it's not about me. And now I'll tell you a little story to kind of illustrate my point. When I found out that I have cancer, that I'm gonna go off and I'm gonna have an operation and I'm gonna go and have chemotherapy for testicular cancer. I'm gonna be in the hospital far away for quite some time. I kind of wanted to spend a bit of time with my son who was 2 years old at the time, and I kind of took him to our favorite park, and it was just this magical day. We kind of we had a picnic. We played on the playground. We chased after the seagulls. We fed the ducks. You're not supposed to do that anymore. So we just had this magical day. And as we were about to leave, I thought, what can I tell my son about cancer? How, like, I don't want to scare him. I don't want to put him off. So we kind of like danced around it. And I just said, we'll be in the hospital and the doctors will take care of it. And then when I was there, we would talk on Skype, and we kind of just tried to pretend that things were kind of normal. And what was weird is when I looked into my son's eyes, when we were there, I was on my tablet. I looked into his eyes, and I realized that there was this pain there. There was a pain of not understanding what's going on, what's happening, as if us adults were kind of keeping secrets from him. And in that moment, Darryl, I realized that by wanting to really shield, my son from my cancer, I realized that I excluded him. And this is when I realized that things had to change, and me and my wife, we really sat down with him and just explained what was going on. We explained what was going to happen. And we also made cancer a part of our lives. We brought special toys that he had only, in my cancer ward. We kind of just talked about it, and in a strange way he responded really well, like, because he kind of knew what was going on, and then it all kind of came into view when we had his third birthday party. And we initially we planned to have this whole huge party at our house. Obviously that didn't happen, but what did happen was that we had his third birthday party in our oncology ward. And like my mom brought the cake, and my mom and my wife brought all the presents. And when I saw my son hugging this giant, Hulk figurine, and we had oncology nurse saying happy birthday, and I saw the smile on his face, and just us, just enjoying ourselves and just having a great time. I realized that this is the time when cancer became normal, when we made it a part of our lives, when I realized that this isn't about me, that I kind of have to bring my people, my family, and people around me, my friends, if I bring them onto this journey, then I can kind of, be happy in my life with or without cancer,
So being alone may not have given you the same kind of experience in terms of being able to be happy?
I believe that the biggest thing started for me with accepting that it's truly happening. Because I think for a while I was in denial that, I mean, I knew that it was happening, but I didn't really acknowledge it. I didn't really feel like it was happening. And maybe part of it comes from the fact that when you have cancer, uh, it's always in a way experience where you are going to feel miserable and alone in some way. I think that starts with that, and I feel that oftentimes you start to lose belief in yourself. You start to doubt yourself. You start to question everything that you do, and I think it's important to kind of turn that around, to turn around the ability to question yourself, Darryl. And I started asking myself kind of different types of questions to hopefully turn that around for me. And I guess what I started to ask it myself, I said, when I was approaching some situation in my life, when I was approaching treatment, or when I was just approaching returning, trying to come back to work, and I was thinking, what if things turn out better than I could ever imagine? And in a weird way, it changed how I looked at things, because we know that in life, things are not going to go and turn out perfectly. We know that that's not how life works, especially when you have cancer. But changing my expectations and wanting to expect good out of life, it made me feel like I'm coming at the world with just a different type of energy, that I'm hoping for something better, that I'm hoping that things are going to go my way. And I think that's when we go through cancer, it's just such a crucial thing to be able to trust yourself again and think, you know what? Things just might go my way. Things can turn out better,
Yeah, the idea of trusting yourself is an interesting thing. When you heard that you had cancer, when your doctor told you, did the idea that you screwed yourself over in some way prior to that diagnosis, that it sort of impacts the idea of trust? Like, did I do something to cause my cancer? Ergo, whatever the answer to that question is, I can't trust any of my choices anymore. I can't trust any of the decisions I make anymore. Does that sort of make sense to you?
Absolutely, Darryl. And for me, it was and the idea about having that power taken away from you is, I think, what you're talking about as well, right? The ability where decisions are made for you all of a sudden. I think for us guys, it's such a huge thing. Like we're so used to making decisions, and all of a sudden, like, you feel powerless and you have that taken away from you. And like you say, yes, with trust, you don't know, am I making the right decisions? Am I on the right track? And for me, what really helped, Darren, and I do this to this day with whenever I have to make decisions, is because I was getting so overwhelmed in just getting lost in what's the right thing to do or what's going to happen next. And what really helped me was just writing it out on paper. It helped me to put it down on a page and write down, like, what is it that's coming up? Well, maybe it's for example, if I had a milestone coming up where I was getting my test results, and I would put it down. Okay, so what is going to happen? And I would put down, and I would actually write it out. I would say, well, my test results are coming up. Well, what could possibly happen? It could say that the cancer's gone, or it could say that the cancer is still there. Well, what is the percentage and the likelihood of each of those? And I would write it down for each of that. And what would I do in each case? And I would actually write that down. And I know it sounds so basic, but putting it out on paper, out of my head, and into something that I could visually see, it just kind of helped me to to take emotions kind of not out of it, but kind of just put them to the side a little bit, so that it helped me to kind of think about it in a rational way. And this is kind of what I try to do now, to kind of get a bit of control over any situation. Like if for example, I had, when I had pain in my remaining testicle, I started freaking out. I started worrying, what if it's the second cancer? What does it mean there's going to be an operation? Does it mean that, I'm not going to be able to have sex? Does it mean that I'm not going to have energy to go to work? I was freaking out. But kind of when I started to write it out and to understand what could possibly be going wrong, it kind of grounded me into the moment and led me to what is the one thing I can do about it now. And it kind of pushed me into just getting in touch with the specialist and understanding, what is going on, and trying to go for tests. And it gave me a sense of being in control, of kind of breaking out what's actually going on, instead of it all being in my head.
Yeah. And, that's a method of distributed memory, where you're sort of taking the things off the top of your head, distributing to something that will archive those thoughts, a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, or typing it into a laptop or whatever, but just getting it off your brain, so that your brain can then focus at more primal and more interesting and emotional content, which allows you to regain the trust that in your decision making and your choice making, that the diagnosis sort of stole from you momentarily. When did you encourage, or what was it like for like your wife around this?
Well, it's fair to say that it was a lot harder than it was for me. I think this is, I feel we sometimes don't give the credit to our caregivers in as much as they deserve, because not only do they kind of have to look after you, and be there for you in a big way, if you're going through cancer, which was the case for me. But for my wife, she also had to go on with her life and go to work and do, and make dinner. And I think all of those things, were really difficult. And I think part of it, what made it difficult, was she didn't really know what is the best way to help, like what was going on through my mind. And it's what really helped me was to try and kind of just cut off the filters and just say what I think. And if she asked me, like, well, how's your day going, and I would just say, you know what, it's been kind of awful, because I'm worried about this test that's coming up, and I don't know what's going to do. Like, I don't know what to do, and I don't know how things are going to turn out. And I think in a weird way, it made things a lot kind of easier for her, because at least she didn't have to second guess herself, or know what it is that, what was on my mind. But, first and foremost, just being direct. Yeah, that took a bit of effort for me, to be honest. And I think that really helped her
Well,
to deal with it.
so help to deal with, what is it? I mean,
Well,
really, what? And let me what? I mean, we could say it in a sort of like, fear or anxiety, or I mean, we could just have all the global terms we want. But I mean, really, what actually was going on?
What was going on is just the whole reality of life has flipped, and that, for we realize that things will never be the same. And and sometimes that's a good thing. It was that, it was standing on the edge of the abyss, and you're looking down, and you don't know what that's gonna do. And I think facing that is a big deal. I think all of us who've been touched by cancer, or by other traumatic events, it's like that thing where, yeah, like you're standing on the edge and you're looking down, and you feel that there is, there's something else that's going to come after that. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm. And the idea that it's like the edge, the abyss, something life will never be the same. I mean, it's sort of interesting in this time of COVID as well. I mean, will life ever be the same after 9/11 in the States? Will, life ever be the same now that terrorism has hit? I mean, in my literal backyard, I'm not too far away from the World Trade Center, and or where it used to be. The idea that change versus life will never be the same. We can understand what change is. Change in getting married, having a child, raising that child, moving from one country to another. I mean, obviously you don't have an Australian accent, so like the idea of change in our lives is different than, in some way, is different than a diagnosis of cancer. Or is it different? Is it just another kind of change? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely one change. Because when I look at life, I think life is just a sequence of changes, and really the person that you are today is an accumulation of those changes, and not only accumulation of the changes, because I don't think that, for example, going through difficult times changes you. I don't think that's true. I think it's how we adapt to those times that changes you, because uh, because we can have like horrific things happen to us, but if we don't respond to them in a way that uh, in a way that you learn to live with it, or in some way, or that gives you a different perspective of life, and you learn how to move on or how to deal with it, then it just becomes something that you add on, and cancer is no different.
Yeah. For prostate cancer guys, they're usually diagnosed older, I mean, like 40s and 50s, it's on up. Uh, Typically 60s and 70s. The idea, or 60s most prevalent, the idea that change has happened versus the idea that you've been diagnosed with a life-threatening disease. Is change and being diagnosed with a life-threatening disease, are they the same sort of mindset, or challenge to your mindset? Or do you think there's something else? And in which case, if there's something else, how do you turn that into a return to happiness?
The return to happiness to me lies through thinking about the future and having a vision for the future. And I know how empty those words can sound, especially when you might be dealing with cancer, especially right now in a time of COVID, when we're living in uncertainty. But I think that it's more crucial than ever before to think about the future, because when you can think about the future, you can you can break through, or at least put to the side this enormous these enormous things that are hard to process, whether that's living with cancer, whether that's dealing with the whole pandemic, because when they're living through an incredible amount of uncertainty, whether that's in your life and also in the society around you, you lose sense of who you are. You lose your sense of direction. You lose your sense of purpose. And it's hard to imagine what life could be, because just struggling to get through the day. And, to me, what really helped me, Darryl, in my life and dealing with cancer was to imagine what that future is going to look like. And the clarifying question that it really was for me was, who do I want to help and how? And the reason is because I believe that that we live in the reason why we live in communities, the reason why we fall in love, the reason why we make friends is because we want to be around other people. And I believe that making that future, it has to be connected with others. It has to be connected with people that you care about, with your spouse, with your friends, with people in your community. And the future has to be around that. It has to be around making a difference in whatever way that is for you. you know um and for me, I know that was in many ways making a difference. With I knew that I wanted to make a difference to people who were like in the same situation that I was. And that's why after treatment I started, for example, the podcast, because I knew that there were people who are struggling through it, going through the same types of issues as I am. I knew that there was, that I needed to be there for my son and to help him and make a difference for him to live his life. And I wanted to be there and to support him. And having that personal reason has kind of shaped the way that I see myself and also how I look towards the future.
Yeah. And you certainly have done that through your podcast. But, I mean, having purpose, a renewed purpose where you're helping and connected with other people. I mean, not everybody's going to get into podcasting or social work or anything like that. I mean, it really doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you have the feeling that you've got a renewed sense of purpose and connection, even if it's a fantasy connection, even if you live alone, but you imagine people around you or you're connecting virtually online. The idea of, sort of a renewed sense of spirit, you know, a cancer diagnosis is basically a kick in the ass that we're mortal, and once you get kicked, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to sit on the pain, or are you going to stand up and walk around and get somewhere? You know, um, Tell me what you think of love before and after you get diagnosed.
Love is an incredibly powerful emotion that I think you either feed it and you embrace it with what you have, and it can really carry you on, or you can kind of hold on to your feelings, and I think that diminishes this feeling of love. I think this is the whole idea of giving versus taking. To me, love is always about giving. It's always about being able to give everything that you can without looking back. And whether that's someone who is already in your life, and this person is right next to you, or maybe it's someone that is no longer part of your life, someone who may be gone, or someone that you'd wish to meet one day. I think a lot of it is about uh, accepting that you want to give something of yourself, and that's what life represents for me.
Yeah. Is it possible to love what you're doing in the same way that you love another person?
Love what you're doing is loving yourself, isn't it?
Very
that
good.
that if
Go ahead.
yeah, if you love what you're doing, you accept the good things about yourself, and you also accept your own situation and the world. The ability to accept the situation that you're in is the only way to move on, because you can't leave a place that you've never been. If you don't accept that this whole reality of cancer is just smashing you in the face, if you don't fully accept that we're living in an incredible time of the pandemic. And I know that's hard. It's hard for many of us, and certainly it was at the start of it for me as well. But when you start to accept it in a way that you know doesn't specifically embrace it, but saying, separating what you can and you cannot control is a big powerful thing. And then they can accept what's happening and decide, well, here is what I can do, and here is what is outside of my control. That is, I think, when we can take we can take control back in some way.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful way to sort of construct a plan to return to happiness after a diagnosis, to find love either in what you're doing or with another person, and to feel that love is giving. Because you can't really rely on being loved, but you could certainly rely on giving love because you have the capacity, I mean, that's something you're doing. Nobody can stop you really from giving love, you know, and you could give love to another human being or an animal or to the things that you're doing, even if they seem mundane. I mean, you could love cutting an apple and enjoying that, eating it. You could love, being on the bus and looking out the window, you know, or feeling a cool breeze on a cold, rainy day or such. There are things that return the emotion of love to ourselves and our bodies that are a pathway towards restoring happiness after you get kicked in the ass by a diagnosis of cancer and all of your emotions are disrupted, whether you're really aware of that or not. And, that's a very human thing. I mean, when you agree that's like just part of being a human, I mean, if you didn't experience that, we'd be more worried about you than not, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what you're describing right now is really the power of living in the moment as well, isn't it? Because if you're like this whole idea that that's why we've got so many things in our culture where we try to bring that feeling back with mindfulness, with mindfulness, meditation, all those practices, and they're great. But I think, finding that way to do it through something that you're passionate about, or rediscovering a passion, or maybe, positioning yourself in such a way that you find that reason that keeps you going, and bring you back to the moment that you're in right now, where, yeah, you could be on a bus or you could be catching an apple and it feels like you're doing something meaningful. And for me, Darryl, the question that really brings it into perspective for me, and I know I have asked this myself once when I was going through treatment. I felt so all over the place. I felt so just lost and scared and confused, and I think just all of my different feelings were kind of just tripping all over each other. And I kind of sat myself down and I said, well, what if this was my last day on this planet? What would I do right now? And I really thought about it. I thought, like, what would I do today? And it really just cleared so many worries. It's put so many things aside because I realized that the only thing that I can do today is just be me. And for me, in that moment, it was, I just went and I just had this massive pillow fight with my son, and we were just doing ridiculous stuff. And I was singing some made up songs about, yeah, about crazy animals, whatever it was. It made me feel like I was alive, like I was in that moment, and I was just being myself, and nothing else mattered. And in many ways, I asked myself this question, you know, each and every day. And even if I'm doing something as mundane as being, stuck in traffic, for example, I'm sitting in my car and I'm going, well, what is the use of me going, being angry and like just, and tooting my horn and doing all of those things? And ask myself, well, what if this was my last day on this planet? What would I do right now? What would I do? I would throw it back my favorite album, and I would, we can be heroes, and I would just sing some song, something that I love doing, and that brought me, and that's what brings me back. And I know it might sound a little bit morbid, right? But I feel that asking myself that actually brought me to the reality of what truly matters to me.
Yeah. Joe, thanks for spending some time with us today. Welcome to our conference. Welcome to the faculty. And we'll be listening for your podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.